I want to thank Pastor Mark for all the music of the season. Last night he was adapting to 50 things at once, and this morning, once again, bringing beautiful music to us, and we thank you, Mark, very much. What a gift. And we thank the woman with the most Christmassy name ever invented, Carol Christian, for being here today to help us do. And Timmy Neolawa, it's always a grace of God to have you sing with us. Thank you for us. I know you're singing for God, but we're watching. So Rudolf Otto was one of the most influential theologians of the 20th century. He wrote a classic book that all seminarians have to study. It's titled The Idea of the Holy. And the central idea of that book is one that most people of faith would not disagree with. It says that most of us experience God in experiences of awe and wonder. That's where we meet God most of the time. Rudolf Otto said that the majority of the time, God is cloaked in the unknown. You can't see him. But every once in a while, in key events, God makes an appearance in human history. This morning we celebrate one of those experiences, maybe the most important experience, when Christ was born and God was revealed in human history. Rudolf Otto says most of the time we live our lives hearing rumors of God. Somebody tells us that they had an experience in which they encountered God. Maybe it was a blessed event, maybe it was a tragedy, maybe it was a retreat, maybe it was a time of solitude, maybe it was some time out in nature, maybe it was hearing some grand piece of music, maybe it was in the birth of a child. It could be a lot of different things, but they tell us that in this moment, I experienced God. And they create a rumor of God. That's what Otto said. The German Lutheran theologian said that we have spiritual discoveries when we follow up on those rumors to see if they're true. And if we find them to be true, that we have an experience with God also, it changes our lives. And then we add another rumor. We tell somebody else, I was in church, I was in nature, I was hearing Carmela or Kenny preach, and the God came to me, and there's another rumor of God. God's out there somewhere, and people keep encountering through somebody's rumor of God. You can add to the rumors of God by your own experience. I've been enjoying a television show. I think I may be the only viewer. It's called Lodge 49. It's a silly kind of a thing on one level and a very meaningful on another. In Lodge 49, it's a story about a guy named Bud, and Bud's father and employer dies suddenly, leaving Bud adrift. He's confused. He doesn't know what to do with his life. He's very sad. And through a strange chain of events, he ends up at Lodge 49. It's the Fraternal Order of the Lynx. It's fictitious. But the Lynx is an international order of men or women who gather in all these communities. And Bud is drawn in, and they welcome him with open arms. And in the initiation of the fraternal order, he learns that the founder had some scrolls that taught deep, meaningful things about mystery and God and the answers of questions that were deep inside of Bud, but they lost the scrolls. They don't have them anymore. And he had diaries of alchemy and various journals of deep mystical wisdom. And Bud is intrigued. He wants to go find them. He wants to dig down into them. But he soon finds out that all the other lodge members long ago gave up on any of that. And now the lodge is just a place to drink beer, to play bingo, to do pinball, to have karaoke night, and to have meetings where they endlessly argue over procedure and ritual. But Bud doesn't give up. he is wanting them to go back and reclaim the founder's vision. And so he gets one or two people to help him, and they're always going out looking to find these scrolls and to enter into this communion that they are promised. And although he finds some secret things and discoveries that they didn't know they actually had, all the rumors lead to disappointment. He never actually finds the hidden mysteries that he's looking for. And that's the risk when you take a story of wonder, when you take it to heart and you think, I wonder if that could be true. Is this rumor of God, could it be real? Sometimes you go and investigate, and sometimes you find out the rumor is not true. I figure there had to be one skeptical shepherd in all of them, don't you think? Had to be one guy, kind of like Thomas the disciple when Jesus said, come and follow me, and he turns to the others and says, let's go with him that we might die with him. You know, he didn't have high hopes. There had to be one shepherd to say, all right, I'll go with you down to Bethlehem. We'll expose this scam once and for all. We'll make it clear to the world this is nonsense. I can see him muttering as they go towards the stable, all this fuss and all we're going to find is a bale of hay. But there were other shepherds who were possibility thinkers. And they heard the angels in the sky, and they heard the rumors that the angels were saying, today is born for you in the city of Bethlehem a child who is Christ the Lord. And those shepherds said, let us go. Let's go try to experience this for ourselves. Let's go find out for ourselves. Let us go to Bethlehem and see if these things that we have been told are true. That's what they're really saying. Let's go to see if what the angels say are true. I bet you went to church at some point in your life because somebody had said they found God there. You went somewhere because somebody said if you go here, you're going to experience the supernatural, the spiritual, the deep. And maybe you did when you went, or maybe you didn't. But your imagination was hooked. Your hope was hooked. Maybe even your skepticism was hooked. And you went to say, I got to see this for myself. That's what the shepherds are doing. They're going to see for themselves. The late, great Frederick Buechner, he died this year, but he wrote that reading the Bible is like standing in a house looking out a picture window. And the home that he creates as a metaphor has a huge roof line that goes out over a porch. So when the person in the house is looking out through the picture window, they can't see the sky. All they can see is the yard. And in the yard, there are all sorts of people pointing up at the heavens, excitedly talking and sharing with one another and looking at what they see in the heavens. And Buechner says that gives the person inside the house who can't see the sky from the house two choices. They can say, those people are nuts, and go make some tea. Or they can say, I got to find out for myself if what they're seeing is out there. And they leave the house and they go in to try to see if they can experience God on their own. That's what the shepherds did. They heard the news and they decided, let's go see if any of this is true. And when they got there, Mary and Joseph were in the stable, and the baby was in the manger, just as they had been told, just as the rumor was stated to them. And there it is, and they see it. And when they see the confirmation, they share their story. They say to Mary and Joseph, we were just out taking care of the sheep when the sky lit up, and the angel said, and here's how we experienced God. And Mary and Joseph needed that desperately. They'd had the baby, the promised child, they had him, but they didn't know for sure. They couldn't know for sure if this was really the Messiah, the one that was going to save the world from the sins. Joseph especially had to have some doubts, don't you think? If this baby was really from God. They needed some confirmation from somebody else. And the shepherds provided it by telling their experience with God. And then Mary, it says, went and pondered everything that was going on, reflected on it. And we know that Mary is the primary source for the book of Luke. especially these early stories. And some way down the line, she was able to tell Luke her experience with God. She gave him her rumors of God, and Luke put them down, and here we are all these years later reading about these experiences, wondering, could they be true? Could we too encounter the living God? Every Christmas, we are told by a circus of sources that we will find the true meaning of Christmas if we just buy a lot of stuff. You ever heard that? If we just buy a lot of stuff. And every Christmas we go, that's probably not true, but we're going to try it again this Christmas. And so we order all this stuff, and we wrap it up, and we put it under the tree, and we watch, is everything going to work this Christmas? And I don't know, we did this in our house last night. Some people open the gifts, and they go, oh, thank you. Thank you. And I'm so crass, I'm thinking, that was $42. I need more than a thank you. Thank you. Some people are thrilled, especially the little ones. Oh my gosh, look what you gave me. Josh got a hug from all the grandkids because he gave these big gifts, and we got to hug Josh. And so that was a big moment. And then some people look and go, why did you give me this? I don't know. For 20 years, my mother gave me a turtleneck and a thing of coffee. I never have worn a turtleneck in my life, and at the time I didn't drink coffee. But every year I'd go, oh, thank you. I had 15 turtlenecks in a drawer somewhere and a bunch of coffee that I gave to somebody. So you get different responses, don't you? You open it up, you look at it, well, maybe. But it never quite grabs the meaning of Christmas, does it? Never. And we sit there and we think, I overextended financially, we went too far again, and we didn't get the true meaning of Christmas again. Because we're looking in the wrong place, amen? We're looking in the wrong place. But so much cultural pressure to do so, everything we see. This year I was reading a magazine from my home state of Kansas. I love the magazine because it tries to make Kansas look like it's interesting. The title of it is Kansas! Like, okay, you got an exclamation point. I got to go see that state. And so you read, and it's a lot of little stories that are interesting. But I was flipping through it, and I saw a sculpture, and it was a sculpture called Child's Play. And it was a sculpture of a kid doing somersaults in a yard, made of metal. And it had won first prize. And I looked to see, well, who did this? And it said Tim Chapman was the sculptor. And my mind went back 50 years. 50 years. When I was in the 9th grade, every boy had to take what they called industrial arts, but we just called it shop class. Anybody know about that? All the boys had to take shop. All the girls had to take home ec. Yeah, that was the way it was, okay? And so we went to shop class, and we were taught how to use tools and stuff, and they had the wooden section, and I made a gun rack and a footstool. I didn't have a gun, but I did have a foot, so it worked out, and that's what I made out of wood. They had the patterns, and I got it done. And then we moved into the sheet metal. That was a sheet metal section, all right? And we were all to make a toolbox. We had the pattern, we had the tools, we had the teacher. There was a guy that sat at my workbench named Tim Chapman. I remember it to this day. Now, there were 4 other guys there. I wouldn't know their names if you put a gun to my head. I just don't remember them. But I remember Tim Chapman, and here's why. The teacher said you got to make a toolbox. And Tim Chapman made a swan. A swan, a big old swan. It was a beautiful, impressive swan. And the teacher came by and said, what is that? He said, it's a swan. And the teacher said, I told you to make a toolbox. Tomorrow, you better start on your toolbox. And the next day, Tim Chapman made a swan. Little swans this time. And then the teacher came the next day and said, Tim, I'm going to flunk you if you don't make a toolbox. And I said to him, Tim, just make a toolbox, a little one. I thought, you're making a big deal out of this. Just oblige him. This isn't art class. It's industrial art class. Make a toolbox. Make somebody happy. And I thought it was frivolous and troubling. And so the next day, other people said, come on, Tim. And next day, we were all there. And you want to guess what Tim made? He made some more swans. He had swans everywhere. And I never forgot it. I've not seen that man since the 9th grade. I did not know him outside of class. We weren't buddies, but I've never forgot his name. And when I saw that sculpture and Tim Chapman's name on it, I thought, that's got to be the old swan maker. And I researched it, got his email. I sent him an email. I said, could you be the Tim Chapman that sat with me? I'm John Burns. I was at your workbench 52 years ago. Is it you? And he sent me back an email saying, yes, it is me. Thank you for remembering. And I still have the swans. Now, I couldn't let that go, could I? Because I've always wondered, why did you insist on making swans when you were supposed to make a toolbox? So I emailed him back and I said, why did you insist on making swans instead of the toolbox? And Tim said, because my mother was dying. And she loved swans. And she made me promise not to tell anybody at school what was happening in our house. And so I made her a swan every day. And it made her smile every day. And that's much more valuable to me than any grade. And by the way, I flunked industrial arts. There it is, right? All the pressure to do one thing. That's why he's still in my memory, right? All the pressure to do one thing, and he does what's much more meaningful, with no regrets to this day, and probably a shelf full of swans. That's what we got to do. We can't listen to all the voices always and look for all there. We have to do what these shepherds do. When we hear the rumors of God, go and try. Now, we may not all try the same thing. We may not all find it in church or in nature or in Mozart's Requiem. We may all find it a little differently. We may find it in the Bible and finally get out of the house and go out and try to experience it for ourselves. But the whole message here is that they encounter God, the shepherds. They go in and share their experience with Mary and Joseph, who share their experience with the shepherds, and they find meaning. They find deep and lasting meaning. I suppose that there's a lot to do when you're keeping sheep. I don't know. I've never done it. But I suppose there's a lot of task involved. But these guys leave their business to go in to see if the rumors of God are true. And that's what we're called to do. Try it out. Investigate. Stay open. See what you experience. Test it for yourselves. Santa Monica Pier is a place where you can see everything in the world. You ever been there? Santa Monica Pier? Yeah, there we go. All right, yeah, about here. Yeah. It's you see the nutty, you see the embarrassing, you see the enlightening, you see the intriguing. It's a place of street vendors and street performers and swimming suits and all sorts of other things. A beautiful view of the ocean, all this eclectic gathering of humanity. A lot of buying and selling, which must surprise the person for whom it is named. Because Santa Monica is named after Saint Monica, who was the mother of Saint Augustine. Saint Augustine, one of the most influential writers in the history of humanity, wrote that his mother was the primary person who kept telling him of God, but he didn't want to investigate. For the first 17 years of his adult life, He was much more interested in sexual adventures and intellectual pursuits. He had many different sexual partners. He lived with one woman for 13 years and gave birth to a son, she did. And St. Augustine said his mother hated her and thought, this woman will never lead my son to God. St. Monica prayed and prayed that St. Augustine would somehow come back to God or look for God or find God. He had no interest in doing it. He said, I caused my mother so much pain. He said, my mother went through more anguish giving a spiritual birth to me than she ever did giving a physical birth to me. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. He wasn't interested, didn't look, didn't try. She even prompted what she thought attractive Christian women to go out and try to entice him into a godly marriage. She thought he'll go for this, but he didn't. She paid St. Ambrose to enter into a debate with him to kind of hook him intellectually, and maybe that would do it. That did not do it. But one day, St. Augustine was reading. He was reading in St. Paul, and he was reading of St. Paul's Rumors of God. And that got a hold of him. Somehow that pierced him. And he came fully convinced that God was real. And as he famously wrote, my restless heart finally found its rest in God. And he wrote that he and his mother had many years of seeking for God and experiencing God together. And for that, he was deeply grateful. But it took him 17 years before he would go and test the rumors of God for himself. I hope you've heard some rumors of God from somebody, from maybe your grandparents or your parents or a sibling, or maybe even your children, maybe a friend, or maybe you just read the Bible and it jumped out at you. I would encourage you to keep open, keep looking, keep testing those rumors of God. And I think you will experience the living God someplace, somewhere, and add your story to all these other stories so that the message of Christmas continues to be shared for all the days the earth